The DayZ infected have been quite the talk of the town recently, especially with the changes the devs may have intentionally or unintentionally made, and this has left a lot of players confused. But instead of sitting here and bashing on what the infected are, I thought I'd take a few minutes to sit down and reflect on what they could actually be. So if you liked the video, please leave a like or a subscribe, it really helps me out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, kinda feel like I'm already doing the job for you, bud. In fact, you know what? Screw this. I've decided you're coming with me. Don't forget to tell me how you think the infected could be improved in the comments. You never know who's listening. Now, these recommendations aren't about making the infected way more difficult or way more easy. Half the player base want the infected so dangerous that once they punch you, they hit you so hard your mother screams from the next room, and the other half want them to show up with a smile, a cuddly hug, and a box set of glee. The devs can't possibly win in that situation because they're gonna let some players down. However, there is a medium of things that could be improved that don't necessarily make them more difficult or more easy, but do somewhat cater to both types of player. The first thing I think could improve the infected would be having varied speeds. Having some infected which were slow to move and slow to respond, and others which were really quick to move and quick to respond, would force you to more thoroughly pick your strategy and approach. It would also make the infected seem like individuals, rather than the same copy and paste feeling we seem to experience now. And building on this individualization of the infected, another benefit, and probably an easy one to implement, could be more differences between the infected themselves. Right now we have several categories of infected, all various health, all various damage, and so on and so forth, with the military ones in armor being the most difficult to kill. However, there are so many people who don't even know there are different difficulties of the infected because they feel the exact same. They move the same, they look the same, they walk the same, they hit the same, they are taken out in the same ways. In fact, sometimes taking out infected on the coast can feel way more difficult than taking them out inland in military compounds and other such places. This could be easily improved just by changing slight things such as the timing they hit, how often they hit, and how far they can detect you. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more. Now, I'm not saying we should remove the repetition from the infected. In fact, the repetition can be one of the best parts of a game. Think of the most difficult games. Think of Dark Souls, Rise of the Ronin, Hollow Knight, Elden Ring, and so on and so forth. All of these games have strong repetition. However, what they have is individual personalities for each individual repetitive state, meaning every boss, once you figure out the strategy, you can learn it and adapt. And even once you learn it, it's not always easy. If DayZ had this level of variation in their attacks depending on what type of infected it was, it would force you to learn and adapt, and as different enemies came towards you, you'd have to change your style entirely. These tiny changes could make a huge difference to how we experience the infected without having to really mess about with their AI. Another change they could implement could be entirely new categories of infected. Now, we see this in games all over. You get the bloater that explodes, you get the ones that shoot acid, you get all types of variations. None of them would fit DayZ. First of all, the infected are not really dead, so that doesn't really work. Second, it would be ridiculous and probably impossible in the engine we currently have, and plus a bunch of other things. However, the changes we could make and the improvements and categories we could add is maybe an infected that can break down a door, maybe a type of infected that could grab you, maybe a type of infected that damages your gear and not you, maybe a type of infected that is so heavily armored with bulletproof gear and a bulletproof helmet that you can only take it out with melee attacks. There could even be a type of infected that only goes around in pairs. Couple that with the second recommendation I made and you could definitely have yourself a very difficult time. And although it's established DayZ lore that your character can't get infected and they're immune, there are other illnesses they could potentially suffer with. Maybe they're so dirty they give you a parasite or give you an infection. Maybe they're ill because they have a flu virus that you caught from them. Because they are alive, Izurvive, meaning they can get ill too. These things could all be displayed in subtle ways, meaning you have to analyze the infected to try and determine which ones they are by their look, their sound, and their movement. Another change could be adjusting how they carry loot and how you obtain the loot. This one is sort of inspired by servers such as Intense, which is one of my favorite DayZ servers on PC. If you kill an infected, you can't just press the inventory button and then collect everything that's on them. You have to spend a little bit of time searching. This adds a little bit of pressure but a whole lot of strategy, because you have to decide whether it's worth being out in the open, unable to defend yourself, just to search the infected, especially when there are other infected around and maybe even players. There could also be a change to nighttime behaviour. Infected should have better pronounced reduced vision and heightened hearing at night, making nighttime encounters distinct from daytime. This would encourage players to adopt different strategies depending on the time of day. Some infected could even sleep, meaning you need to sneak by them, preventing you from running everywhere or risk waking up 20 infected across the town. Some infected's vision could be completely reduced, meaning if you stay there, there's a chance they'll walk right by you, but also if you move before you're out of their range, they'll just come running at you and start beating the hell out of you. Another change is something we already kind of see, but it could be developed even more. It's their reactions to the environment itself. For example, if they see a light, they will go towards the light. If they hear the sound of a car, they will go towards and follow the car. Campfires, generators, and so on and so forth. This interaction with the environment makes them feel like they're actually there. They're actually a part of the world. But it could go one step further. What if they not only interacted with the players and the sounds and the noises, but they also interacted with each other? This could be because they're protecting certain loot, it could be because they're territorial, it could just be because they're irritated. Either way, the player would be forced to check it out or avoid it, not knowing what is actually happening. Is it another player that's fighting with them? Are they fighting themselves? What could it possibly be? Maybe they're brandishing weapons they found ready to attack a player with them, meaning the player yet again has to adjust their strategy. Maybe they're chowing down on a goat they killed, which they already chase. This just happens to be one area that the devs have already done some really good work on. Even the rain affects how much they can hear you. These little details exemplify just how good the infected could be, even without huge AI changes. However, there are things that the devs could do wrong, and also in my opinion have done wrong in the past, and there's subtle changes that don't impact difficulty but rather reward. DayZ is a game about give and take. Although it's mostly centered around the take, it's never unfair in the way it does it, except in one large way containing the infected. This way is damaging gear, even when blocking with something like a two-handed weapon. This is an issue for several reasons. The main ones being, there's no way to prevent it. DayZ is give and take, as I said. Here, there is no give. There's no strategy you can really employ to deal with this issue other than avoid the infected altogether. And if you always have to avoid the infected, then there's no point in them being there. They are not more of a threat being able to do this. They're not more difficult to deal with. They are just an inconvenience and a frustration to the players. It's why I recommended them as a category, because it then gives the player more control. It balances out the reward and punishment system that keeps the players playing. Taking away the players' achievements through no fault of their own is not meeting the demand for tougher infected. The decision shouldn't be take on the infected and ruin the game, even if you do everything right, or just avoid them completely. But if you want to learn 69 tips and tricks that will actually help you in DayZ, click here. Or for something else, click here. And as always, until next time.